So for today, we'll be focusing a little bit here as week 2. We'll be focusing a little bit about the component life cycle. Then we already know use state. There is a typo here, use state. We'll study today also use effect. And during the week, maybe after 2 days, we will also learn how to use context. So all these three, that's what we call React hooks. So what are React hooks? So React hooks simply, they are just, do you know what's a hook? Does anyone know what is hook?
Like like hooker, but hook.
You see this one.
Mhm.
So that's what we call the hook. So we call them hook because they allow us to hook to our component function and then do something depending on which hook you are using. So these allow us to hook inside our component function and then do something depending on which hook we are using. So that's the word is coming from this one. Now, what you need to know before React 16.8, that's the version, the current version we are using is 18 something. Before React 16.8, we did not have a functional component, so we were not able to create a component using function. And for that, we had to use a class for that. But now, after the creation of hook, now we can either use a class component or a functional component. Both of them are doing the same job, and these hooks allow us to do the same job as a class component base. So, have an idea what is a hook? So hooks, they allow us to do something in our functional component. We use them only inside functional component. And of course, React hook, all of them, they have two rules. So let me show you. So before React, as I told you, 16.8 or 0.18, whatever, we use this style here, as you can see. So we need to say export default class app extend from the components, and we need to render, and then we need this render here, it just render your component or show your component. Then we need to return this way. And now, as you can see, the functional component is much more easier, actually, as you can see. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, now for us, we are not studying class-based component, we are using functional component. But of course, to achieve the same functionality, we need to use hooks. So that's basically how it is. So here it says the hook is version 16.8 actually. It's not 18.8. Before that, we were allowed to use a component using classes. But after that, because now we have hook, we can just create a functional component. So some of the hooks, as you can see, we have use state, use effect, and use context API. So what are the rules for the component here? So let me show you. Of course, I've shared with you here. It will list all the components we have in React. So we have around 10 to 11. For us, we will be just studying the first 3 because that's the most important thing as a beginner. And later on, if you need, you can learn the rest. Okay. So as you can see, React hook, we have use state, use effect, use context, use reducer, use callback memo, ref, imperative handle, and then use debug value. We have around 10 or even maybe a little bit more. But for us, we're going to study the first 3. So the first 3 are quite important. So first, what are the rules for all the hooks? So we only can use them in functional component. We cannot use them in class component. That's the rule number 1. So only hooks, we can use them inside the React functional component. And second one here, they need to be at the top level. What do I mean by that? Well, if I came here and I want to create a piece of state, let's say I will say const count, set count like that. They must be at the top. I cannot put them inside conditions. Say, for example, if true or false, and then I put my state here. It's not allowed. So as you can see, this one is not allowed. It won't work. It's not allowed for you to do so. I cannot put them inside loop. I cannot put them inside another function. So if I have another function here, let's create a function and let's say, for example, say hello. And this is a function. Of course, you can have any valid JavaScript before the return here. I cannot use them inside this function here. Okay, it's not possible to do so. I cannot put them inside condition. I cannot put them inside loops. I cannot put them inside another function. If I'm gonna use hooks, they must be at the top level. So they must be here. Voila. And I need to remove those. That's rule number one. I'll just use state here. Voila. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have just two simple rules for all the hook. The first rule is they can be used only inside functional component, and the second one, they must be at the top level, which means I cannot put them inside another function. I cannot use them inside loops. I cannot put them inside conditions. They must be here at the top level without any condition, without anything. Okay, let's have a look first at use state. So use state, we already use it multiple times. Use state allow us to manage the state, as you know. And now whenever this state is changed, it will going to re-render my component. So if I type here count, for example, let's go just inside, and I say count like that. Now, whenever the value of count here changes, my component is gonna re-render. And that's it here. Of course, now I can have multiple pieces of state, not just one. I can have multiple if I want to. Now here it's count, let's say user, for example. Set user. And here, let's say our state, it will be an object, for example. So I can have multiple pieces of state if I want to. Now my state here is a default value. It could be an object, it could be an array, it could be anything. It could be a string, it could be a number, and it could be a Boolean. It's really depending what do I need. Is the idea clear here? Yes,
Yes.
no?
Yes.
So this one, we use it multiple times, so it should be simple here, the first one. Now we will study today the second one, which is called useEffect, and we'll keep this one for later. So now let's focus on this one, which is called useEffect. Of course, the two rules here, I've already shared an article with you as well. But just remember, we can only use them inside functional component. Second, they must be at the top level. I cannot call them inside the loops or condition or function and stuff like that. Okay. So what the hell is useEffect? Let me get rid of this one. So useEffect talk allow us to first, before we're going to use this hook, we need to understand the life cycle of the component. Can anyone tell me what are different phases of life cycle of the component? So what different phase we have for the component? Component life cycle. So what will be the first phase?
I do not get your question.
So the question here now, each component I create in React, this component, it will have a different stage. That's what we call component life cycle. So what are these different stages? So first, when I create the component, okay? When I create the component and the component is being added to the DOM, okay? That's the first stage. The second stage, when the component is being updated. And the final stage here, when the component being removed from the DOM. Again, component lifecycle, we have different, let's say, phase. First, we have component did mount or mount. So we call it in the class, so in class base component, we call them component did mount. Component did mount. So component did mount means that the component is being added to the DOM. Okay, so any component I create, it will be added to the DOM. Now, some of them, when I refresh the page, I open my applications, they will be directly being added to the DOM. Some of them, no. It really depends. Sometimes it will be added if I go to slash something. For example, let's say I want to show user with ID 1 information, and I need to go to user/1. Of course, currently we cannot do that with React because we don't know how to use context API. But when we study use context API, we'll be allowed to create different route. So you will be able to create a different pages. This is /login, /register, /info, stuff like that. So the first phase of the component lifecycle, that's what we call component did mount. What do I mean by component did mount? That means the component is being mounted, it's being added to the DOM. That's the first phase. The second phase is component did update. So component did update, that means I did something and my component is being updated. For example, if I have a piece of state here, and if this piece of state here, whenever the value of the count changes, my component is going to re-render, right? And that's what we call component did update. So this component is being updated. And the last phase of component lifecycle is we call component did. What do we call it? Component will unmount. Unmount means it will be removed from the DOM. Is the idea clear? Yes, no?
Yes.
So each component we create in React, they will have different phases. Okay? Actually, there will be 3 phases. Now, in class-based component, we have 5 different phases. We don't have 3. We have 5 phases, but you don't have to worry about because we are not using class-based component. And starting from 2017, most of developers prefer using class functional component because now, as I told you, we have hooks, and hook make everything much easier. So you need to remember that all the time, any component we create in React, it will have 3 phases. The first phase, it will be when the component is being added to the DOM. And that's what we call component did mount. Did mount or mounting means being added to the DOM. The second phase is when the component is being updated. So maybe I changed some piece of state, I did something, and my component re-rendered. And when it's re-rendered, that's what you called component did update or updated. The last phase is when the component is being removed from the DOM. We didn't see this one because we do not have multiple pages. But later on, when we learn context API, sometime, depending on the route, if the route /register, I will add register component. But if it's /login, I will add login component, and I will remove, for example, register component. And that's the final phase, which is called remove from the DOM. Is the idea clear here? Yes, no? I'm not explaining how to create a rocket. I mean, it's just 3 phases, that's it.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah.
Here I have a README. Let's go here. Component lifecycle. So if you read this one here, it will explain in detail what I just explained, which is mounting here. Mounting is being added to the DOM. Of course, that will happen most of the time. It depends on the component, but most of the time when my application starts, some component will be added to the DOM directly. Some of them is really dependent. Update the phase. So update the phase, that means sometime my component is gonna update or gonna re-render. In this case, the phase, we call it update phase. Unmounting, that means the component is being removed from the DOM. Now I can see all these 3 phases using useEffect hook. So let's see. So what is this useEffect hook? So let me create useEffect here. So to use useEffect hook, first I need, of course, to import it from React. So I can just say comma useEffect. Voila. I don't need use state for, well, maybe I will need it. So let me keep it here. So how will useEffect work? Well, I can just type useEffect like that, useEffect. And remember, useEffect hook is just like a function, as you can see, but I need to pass a function as a parameter. Voila. So it actually useEffect take 2 parameters. The first parameter, it will be a function, as I created here, arrow function, as you can see. And the second parameter, it will be an array. And you may tell me, of course, what is the array? Now we will see what's the array. Again, use state, we see how we can use it. So to use state, I need to declare like that const, and I need to destructure it, count, set count, depending on which I name this one. If it's test, I need to use a set test, and then I need to use my hook, and then I need to pass the default value, as you can see. We know this one already. But how can I use useEffect here? Well, to use useEffect, I need to just say useEffect and execute it as a function, and then it take two parameters. The first parameter, it will be a function, and most of the time, if not all of the time, we use an arrow function. Why? Because it's much more simpler. And the second parameter, it will be an array. So let's just type here, hello. Okay, so what is that here? So this array here, we call it array of dependency. What do I mean by that? Well, we will see now what do I mean by array of dependency. And now here, what do I want to do here in useEffect? Let's say in useEffect here, I want to create a function, and in this function, I want to send a request to the backend. So useEffect, most of the time, you use it to create side effects. That means most of the time, it's the perfect place to send a request to the backend to get data. And of course, as you know, as a front-end developer, most of the time, if not all of the time, we need to send constantly requests to the backend to get data. So here inside useEffect, it will be the perfect place to send a request to the backend. Now, one small note first, you cannot, so as you can see, I told you take two parameters. The first parameter is function, and the second parameter is array of dependency. This array is not always empty, huh? Sometimes it's empty, sometimes it depends. Now here, one small note here, you cannot put the keyword async here in this function. Okay, if I see useEffect callback, synchronous prevent rar condition, puts a async function inside it. So what React is telling me here is just telling me you are not allowed to make this function async. Okay, so rule, I am not allowed to make this function async function. Okay, fine, but now if I want to send a request to the backend, then what should I do? Well, I can create another function inside it, so I can just say const get users, and get user here, I need to make it a async function, because as I told you, I need to send a request to the backend. Voila. And now, of course, I need now here to call my function at the end. Inside the same function here, which take up the parameter of useEffect, I need to call my function. If I don't call my function, it will not be executed. So I can create any function I want to inside the useEffect function, and I can make it async. But put async keyword here, you are not allowed to do so. And now here, what do I want to do? Well, it's quite simple. Now let's try to send a request. So I can just say, for example, try and catch, just as we learned. And if I have an error, I want to log the error. So I'm trying now to send a request to the backend to get some data. And I can just say const response, it's equal to await, which now let's try to get users for now here. And now here I can just say if response.okay. If it's not okay, I want to throw an error. And of course, if it's okay, then I can do something here. And in order to do something here, I need to piece of state. Why do I need piece of state? Well, because now here I need to update my user. So here in the beginning, my user, it will be an empty array, but when I send a request, I will get my user, which will be 10 users. So I need somehow to change the state. And in order to change the state, I will need to use useState, as you know. So let me create a piece of state here, and I will share const.
Amir, sorry. On the line 16, you have typo.
Where?
Line 16.
16.
ifres.ok.
Oh, you are right.
Okay.
Okay. So now, as you can see, I have piece of state, users, set users, and by default, my user is an array. Now, when I'm sending a request, as you can see, I'm creating my function, which is a async function, and I'm calling my function here. When the response dot okay, if it's not okay, I'm throwing an error. But if it's okay now, I need to update my piece of state. So I can just say data, it's equal to await res.json, and then I can now update my users like that, as you can see. So as you can see, data, it will be a waitress.json. So I need to pass my data. And whenever I send a request to this URL, it will give me an array. So I need to know how my data look like. Because if I don't know, how could I put the default state? So now here I know for sure that my state here on my data, it will be an array of object. And that's the reason why the default value here, I make it an empty array. So now what I'm doing is use effect here. I'm trying now to send a request to the backend to get the users, and I will check if res.okay. If it's not okay, I'm gonna throw an error with the status, because the status is quite important, as you know. But if I don't have any error, I'm gonna parse my data await res.json, and then here I need to update my piece of state here. Is the idea clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now let's go and see if that will work or not. Of course, I need to run my server. I did not run it. Yes. And voila. And here let's just say npm run dev. Now, of course, before I run my server or anything here, now the question here is when this component is gonna render. So the first phase, which is component did mount, when this component is gonna be added to the DOM. I am in the app component, as you can see. So that's the root component. When it will be added to the DOM. So when this component here, when is this component app, it will be added to the DOM. When my page is started, when I start my server, or after 10 hours, or when? Yeah.
Immediately? No.
That's my point here. So yes, when I start my server, this app component, it will be created and it will be added to the DOM. Okay. And here, when this array is empty, that means when the page is refreshing. So when I refresh the page, if this array is empty, that's what we call the array of dependency. That means my component here, it will be added to the DOM, and I will just send this request directly. And that will happen only when I reload my page, refresh my page, reload my page. Why? Because I have empty array here. So the array of dependency is empty. By the way, it's not possible to do it like that, to not pass array of dependency. Why? Because if you do that, that means each time your component render or updated, it will send a request to the backend. It will send a request to the backend again and again and again. That's absolutely bad idea. So all the time you need to pass an array of dependency. If you don't have any dependency, you will pass an empty array. Now, what does empty array mean? Well, it means that when my page here is refreshed or is reloaded, then I'm gonna send I'm gonna execute the code inside my useEffect. Now, if I go to my server, let's click in here. Voila. And now, of course, I need to open this one, and now I need to go to my network to see if my request is being updated correctly or not. So when I refresh the page, see what will happen. Now it's sending a request to user with status 200, and I'm getting my data, as you can see. And when that will happen? Well, when I refresh the page, as you can see. Every time I refresh the page, I refresh my page, my component out, it will be added to the DOM, and then it will send a request to get my users, as you can see. Is the idea clear here? Yes, no?
Yes.
So that's what we call useEffect. Let me clean this code. I don't want it. So whatever happened inside this one here in this stage here, let me just add a comment here. This one, it will be component did mount. So whenever my component is being added to the DOM, and of course, because I have an empty array, that means it will happen when I refresh my page, it will happen. So here, when the component did mount, and here, let's, for example, log something. I'm just gonna console.log something, and I can just say component mounted. How many times this log it will happen? Can anyone tell me? How many times this log so how many times it's gonna log component mounted?
Once?
Once only. When I refresh my
Page.
page. So if I go here now, I go to my console, I refresh, voila, component mount. Of course, it's double times why I told you why before, because I have this one React strict mode. Okay, so ignore it now, we have double time. So, but it will be only one time when I refresh my pages here. Click. So when I refresh my page, this code is gonna be executed. Voila. So again, if I go to use effect, the code here inside this function, here I'm passing the first parameter, it will be executed when the component did mount. When component did mount means when the component is being added to the DOM. And of course here, component, it will be added to the DOM when I refresh my page. Fine. Now, what if I want to execute something when the component is being removed from the DOM? So what do I mean by that? Let's say I want to execute something if I remove this component from the DOM. Of course, now there is no way to create it, so I need to create a new component to show you. How can I do that? Let me create a new component here. It's not a header, but it's fine. Let me just create a header. Although it's not a header, but it's fine. So I can just say RAFCP. And in here, I can just remove this one. I don't need it. Let's get rid of all of those. Let's get rid of all of those here. I don't need it. And let's say that's my header here. Now what I want to do, let's import my header here inside my component. So I need to import header. So I can just say import header from this one. Okay, now what if I want to, for example, do something when I remove, so I am trying to somehow, now I will create, let's say this one, and I will create a button. When I click on the button, let's say I will do something. Maybe I can remove this component from the DOM. So let me create this header, and inside this, actually, let me add H1. H1 like that, and here I will just say hello. And here, let me add a button. Button like that, and let's say delete header, or delete header component. Of course, to delete here, I need to add an event listener. It will be on click, for example. And when I click here, I want to delete my header. Delete header. Of course, I don't have delete header, so let me delete the header in, let me pass it as a props. So it will be a function. I need to pass it from the header. Whenever I click on this button, I'm trying to just to get rid of this guy here, this component. So let's go here, and here let's just create a function. And remember, of course, I told you now is the role of a hook is I must be at the top. So if I'm going to create my function, I need to create it here. And my function was, what was my function here? Delete header component. It should be here. Delete. Delete header component, or whatever you want to call it. Voila. Maybe what I can do here, let's see what we can do. I don't have an example. I cannot show you. I need, I don't have anything in mind really. Fine, let me explain it now, just a different phase when each phase is being happened. And when I explain use context hook, I will show you how we can remove one component from the DOM and add another component from the DOM. So now let's ignore this one for now. Let's ignore the header here. Let's remove this one. I don't need it for now. So let's get back to our use effect here. Now, what if I want to create or do something when I unmount the component? So here, component did mount, that's mean the component, this code here, it will be executed when the component added to the DOM. But what if I want to execute something if I remove this component from the DOM? In this case, I can return a function. So here, as you can see, in return, I can return a function, an arrow function, and this one here, it will be component will unmount. That's mean whenever my component here is being removed from the DOM, whatever code inside this function here, which is a return function, it will be executed. I'm not sure if I will be able to do this one because, yeah, actually, when I remove it here, I will have a component unmount. So when I refresh, my component actually is being removed. Everything is being removed, and I will have component unmount. So first I have mount because I added. Then when I refresh it, it will be removed everything. I will have no pages. So I will see component unmount, and then after that, I will have component mount. But it will be very obvious when we study use context API, because it will allow us to add some component depending on the route and remove others. So now what I want you to understand is that that's the two phases. The first phase, when the component is being added to the DOM, it's here. All the code I added here as this part, when the component is being added to the DOM, it will be executed. What if I want to do something when the component is being removed from the DOM? Well, in this case, I need to say return, and then here return, I need to return a function. And here, all the code or any code here inside this return function, whenever my component is being removed from the DOM, it will be executed. Now we understand these two phases, which is component did mount and component here will mount. Will unmount, that means it will be removed here, it will be added to the DOM. But what is when my components will be updated? Well, my component here, I can use another use effect. By the way, you can use multiple use effect. Voila. So as you can see here, because I have this piece of state, and whenever my piece of state is being updated, my component, it will update. And here, as you can see, so component did update. So any code inside this one here, it will be executed when my component is being updated. And you may tell me, okay, but here you said that this code, it will be executed when my component is being added to the DOM. But here, this code is the same place, right? Then why this code is not happening when it's being added to the DOM? Can anyone answer this question? What's the difference between this one and this code here? They're in the same place, but this one happened when my component is being added to the DOM, and this one will happen when my component is being updated. Can anyone tell me what's the difference between these two? Just look. Can anyone?
First will create and second will update virtual DOM.
So the first one here, I'm telling you, the first one here, this code, it will be executed when your component is being added to the DOM. That's use effect. But here I am telling you, in this use effect, this code, it will be executed not when it's been added to the DOM. No, this code, it will be executed when your component is being updated. But what's the difference between this one and this one? Why this one is just when my component is being added to the DOM, and this one when my component is being updated? What's the difference between the two?
Array dependency.
Yes, I know you know that, Diniando. Okay, someone else? What's the difference between this one and this one? Look. What's the difference between this one and this one? It's very obvious. This one here, because it's an empty array, my array of dependency has nothing. That means this one, it will be executed only when, or this code here is precisely, it will be executed when it's being added to the DOM. Why? Because my array of dependency is empty. But this one here, this code here, it will be executed each time I change the value of the user. So whenever I change this piece of state, my component is being updated. You know that before, I told you. Each time I change the state, my component is going to re-render. And that's the reason why I pass the user inside the array. That's what you call array of dependencies. That means each time the user change, this code is gonna execute it. And each time the user change here in piece of state, of course, my component is gonna update it. And that's what we call array of dependency. So now this here, this code, it will depend on the users. Whenever I change the value of the users, this code is gonna be executed. And of course, if I change the value of the users, my component is gonna update it, and this code, it will gonna execute it. Do you know now the difference between the three or no? Yes, no.
Yes.
So it's really depend what you want. If you want to update your component each time a piece of state is being updated, then you need to pass this value inside your array of dependency. And this, whenever you pass here, of course, now here you can pass any. Now you can execute any code you want whenever your component is being updated. So each time I change this value of the state, this component here or this code here is going to be executed. Why? Because now my array of dependency depend on the user. That means each time the user change, it's going here and it will execute this code and it will update my component. Is it quite clear the difference between the three phases? You may now not understand why we are doing all of that, why I spent all of this time explaining. But when you get to real projects, those phases are super important. Is it okay?
It's okay, but quite complicated.
Not complicated, no, not at all. Not at all. Let's try to do them again. So what is useEffect? I am telling you useEffect, we use it most of the time when we try to perform side effect, and most of the time when we try to get data from the backend. So what is useEffect? What does it take? Well, it takes two parameters, just a function, and the second one, it will be array of dependency. Now, if this array here, you cannot omit this array. So you cannot do that. If you do that, that means each time your component is being updated, this function, it will trigger, and that's not what you want to most of the time. So you need to pass this array all the time. That's important. Now, if my array is empty, that means when my component is being added to the DOM, and most of the time that will be when I refresh my pages. So whenever any code here, it will be executed. Any code here. Component did mount. And here I can just log something, just so I know. Component mounted. Mounted, that's being added to the DOM. Okay, what if I want to do something when my component is being removed from the DOM? Well, in this case, I just need to return, return a function. And here I'm returning an arrow function. Now, everything inside this return function, it will be executed, but when my component is being removed from the DOM. And that's what we call component will unmount. Here, component did mount, that means being added to the DOM. Fine. Now here, what is I told you there is three phases. The other phase here, it will be component did update. But how can I perform this one? Well, that's simple as well. I can have multiple useEffect if I want to. But remember here now, everything here, every code inside this function, it will be run whenever now it depends on the user state now, as you can see. So that is array of dependency. I'm passing the users. That means each time the user change, the code here, it will be executed. And of course, if the state change, my component, it will be updated. And now here, as you can see, component did update, and voila. Not complex at all. It's very simple, actually. Okay. Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, now let's try to do our project. So for today's project, let's try to do our project. Our project will be very simple. So let me get rid of all of those. Let me get rid of all of those for now. So what I'm trying to perform, well, I'm gonna try to, if you remember, get users. Voila. So here in JSON placeholder, I have different users. Now what I want to do, I want to create a project and which will send a request to the backend to get these users. And after that, show these users. Of course, I need to show them. I need to render them. So how can I do that? Well, as you can see, I've created already my project. So I have my app.jsx. I have nothing inside it. As you can see, just hello. And of course, yeah, my main, nothing new here. Let me just rename this one to main. I don't like the index. You don't have to do that. It's just for me. I don't like the name index. Let me just rename it to main again. Voila. Okay. So here, as you can see, I have component and I created a new folder called APIs. Why? Because I want to create, if you remember in separation of concern, we put our API separated. We can do that the same here in React. And what I'm trying to do here, well, I'm trying to get users. So let's create our function. I can just say const get users. By the way, it's plural. It's plural user. So it will be an async function, as you know. And now here I can just export it directly. Okay, that's fine. Now I need to use try and catch, as you already know. And of course, if I have an error, what should I do? If I have an error, what should I do?
Throw an error.
I should log the error. So using console.error. Well, I can come here now. I can just say const response. It's equal to await, of course, because now I'm using async. And here, that's my URL here. You can share the URL with you anyway. Or you can just go to type code. It's simple. Voila. Share it on Slack already. Now, let's go to my code here. So that's fine. Now, what do I need to do? I need to check if it's not okay. If it's not okay, I need to throw an error, of course. So I can just say if not res.okay. So if res.okay is not an okay, I need to throw an error. And the error here is in Chinese. I don't know, it's in Japanese, but I can update it here. And here I can just say HTTP error with status. Remember all the time to log the status because it's quite important property. And of course, if I don't have any error, now I can parse my data. As you can see, await res.json. And here I need to return my data. I can name it users, by the way, if you want to. With users, it will be much better actually, but yeah, you can name it data if you want to, or users. It does not really matter. Voila. So now that's my API. Everything is fine. I don't see any problem. Okay, cool. I finished my API. Now let's go to my app here. My app, currently, I'm not gonna do anything inside my app. I'll go to my component. First, I need to create my header. Of course, to create the header, I can just say RAFCP to just render a template component. I don't need React. And normally in the header, we need to pass a prop, right? What should we call it? Title, maybe? Yes. Now here it's just like HTML here. I want to create a header, and inside this header, I want to create an H1. Wow. So that's my component. Title, of course, what type of data it will be titled?
String.
Of course, it will be string here. So I can just say title prop type string is required. Yes, I want it to be required. And here, what do I want to do? Also, I need to import my CSS just in case I have any styling. So I can just say import header .css. That should be good. So that's my component is ready. Let's import it directly inside this one.
It shouldn't be / to import CSS.
Let me see. Header. Indeed, it must be. Yeah. Okay. Let's import my component here at the top. I can just say import. It was header, right? Voila. And now here, all I have to do, I can just now maybe, yeah, I can keep my div if I want to. And now here I need to just render my component header. Of course, now I need to pass a title. Title, it will not be hello world. It will be users, for example, like that. And now here, if I go here, I have some styling, but I don't know if they will be implemented or not. Yeah, they are implemented actually. So as you can see, that's my component here. And if I go to React, well, that's my component. And I see my props. And this component, it will be re-rendered by mostly by app, as you can see. So by the root of the root component. Cool. Now the second step, what do I want? Well, I want the users. So here I need to create a component users. And this user here, it will be plural. That means plural. That means I need to get all the users. And also I will have another component, which will be a single user. I don't need that. I will need prop type. Here I need to remove this one and I need to put parentheses. Okay. Let me import my CSS just in case. Those slash here users CSS, it's called users. Yes, it is users.css. Now, what do I want to do here inside users? Well, I can just now create an order list. And inside this order list here, I will do something later. Okay, fine. But now I don't have my users. What should I do here in this component specifically? What should I do? So I want my user here because this is my user component. So what should I do? I want my users here. What should I do? Of course, my user does not exist here. They exist on the backend or my API. What should I do here?
Import APIs?
Import?
APIs?
Yeah, I can import my API. That's a good idea. So let me import my API. So I can just import. We name it get users, right? Voila. I don't need the extension here because as I told you, in React, the extension GS or GSX, it will assume by default. So I don't need an extension. But if it's anything else, CSS or anything, I need the extension. That's fine. Now I'm getting my API. That's my API. That's fine. But now what do I want to do here? I want somehow to have my users. And of course, when I get this user, I want to render or re-render this component. So I will need piece of. I will need piece of. I will need piece of. Come on, guys.
State.
Of course, I will need piece of state. So here const users set users. What will be the default value? An empty array. Why an empty array? Well, because if I go to my users here, as you can see, they have array with 10. So that means the default value, it will be just an array. Of course, now I need to import my hook here, which is use as state. I like to be at the top. So we can just import use state. And voila, that should be okay for now. Not bad. Okay, fine. Now here, what I want to do, click. Now here, I can just somehow render my users. So how can I render my users? Well, it's quite simple. Users here, it will be an array, right? Yes, no. So what I can do, I can just say users dot length. If user dot length is equal to is greater than 0, that means I will have some users. Else, I will have no users. Voila. So I will put two parts here. So if the length is more than 0, this I need now to render something here. But if it's not, then I need to render something here. And here I can just create, if I want to, a p tag. Voila. And here, for example, no users exist, for example. No user exists. And here, if the length is more than this one here, what I can do, well, I can just loop through them again. Say users dot map. What is the single of user? What's the single of users?
User?
Yeah, user. So here I can just loop through it. And for each one, now I need to create a component. And this component, it will be single user. Like that, which I don't have yet, by the way. So I need somehow to create it. Now, what the hell is going on here? And
It shouldn't be user in the brackets.
Where?
Like users.map and user, not users.
You're right. It should be user here. But the problem is, what the hell is this one is here? Unexpected token, user never. Okay, fine. If they're greater than this one, then what we're going to do, I just need to add something here. I think I can just add here the UL if I want to. Actually, this one should be here. Click. Voila. And this guy here, cut it. Let's put it here. Because in reality, what I need to do here, I need to, here in these parentheses, I need to render either a DOM element or a component. So that's why I put an order list. Now I can prefer in JavaScript or perform in JavaScript service. Here it's a p tag, so I can do whatever I want to. Of course, I have a problem. Why? Because now here I don't have user component, as you can see. So I can just go to now, just create user component quickly. Click like that, and here clean this one for now. Remove this one for now. And yeah, just keep it like that now for now, just it will be fine. I can now import my users component here. I should import it here. Import user from users. That's what I want to. Now it's fine. But the problem here is just missing, it's telling me missing key prop. So I need to add a key, right? And what would be the key? I need something unique. What is something unique I have? User dot.
Probably ID.
Yes, dot ID. So user dot ID is unique. But now here I need to pass this user, it's an object. I need to pass it to my component. So I can just pass it as a prop. I can just say user, it's equal to, voila, now we can pass my data as a prop. Oh, that should be good. That's fine. Now that means here inside my users, I will receive a prop. And this prop here, it will be a single user object. So it will be a user object like that. Should be fine, not bad. But I have a problem still. I need now to send somehow a request to the backend. And somehow I need to grab the users, and somehow I need to update these users. So what should I do? How can I send a request to the backend?
So now useEffect.
Yes, so I need to use a hook, which I said use effect. I'm just going to import it like that. And I told you hooks, the rule of hooks, they must be at the top level, right? So now I need to put my use effect here. Both of them must be at the top. Use effect to take two parameters. So it will take a function, an array of dependency, and here array it will be empty. That means I want to send this request when my page is loaded. So when my page is loaded, I will send a request to the backend to get this user, and then I need to update the users. Well, that's fine. Can I make this function async?
No, you need to create separate variable.
Indeed. So why do I need an async function? Why do I need to async function? Why do I need an async function? Because whenever my function here, I'm planning to use this API. Whenever my function is async, it will return what? What's this? It will return a promise. So I need to handle it. So I cannot handle it. That means I need a async function. So what I can do here, it's quite simple. All I have to do here, I can just create a new function. Say, for example, const. I can name it get users, or maybe it's already get users. So let's name it, for example, fetch users. And here I can just make it a small arrow function, as you can see. It's a async function, so I need to call it. Of course, if I don't call it, it will not work, right? So I need to call it. And now all I have to do, I can just say const users. It will be equal to what? Await get users. And when I get my user, what should I do? If I have the new user, what should I do? What should I do? If I have the new user, so I send a request to the backend, I get the data. Now I need to do something. What should I do?
Set users.
I need to update my state. So here I just say set users, it will be a user, and voila. As you can see. Do I have any props here? No, so I don't need you. And here. So now I have two hooks here. The first hook, it will be my user, set user, the default base empty array. Now use effect, as you can see, I can of course put my API inside the use effect, but it will be huge. That's not a good practice. So good practice here to separate your API like that. And of course, you will need an async function. You cannot make this function async, so you'll create a new async function, fetch users, as you can see, and you will have just 2 lines of code here, better than 10. So const users, it will be await, and I can just call my my API get user. Now it will give me the user. Whenever I have the user, I need to update my piece of state. And that's it. Remember, all the time I need to call my function. So I'm creating my function and I need to call it, all of them inside the useEffect function. Otherwise, it will not be executed. Okay, now if everything is okay, let's see. I don't know. Let's go here, refresh, and it looks like I have nothing. Why? I don't know. What I am doing? What I'm doing wrong? What I am doing wrong? Am I importing my user inside app.css or app.gsx or not? Am I importing my component?
No.
Of course.
No.
So it's nothing good will happen. So I need to import my users, import users like that. I don't need user, I need users. Now here, all I have to do, I can just render my user component. And I don't need anything else, actually. I just need that. And if I go here, voila. Now, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Of course, I have this user. And if I go to inspect it, see, I have my component. But now my component, I did not create any proper HTML or GSX. So as you can see, that's my component, user, user, user. I have different key. And yeah, of course, I will have props as well. For each user, I will have different object with different data. So as you can see, the name here was, what is the name here? Is Irving Howell. Here it will be something else. Leanne Graham, whatever. So now what do I want to do? Well, it's quite simple now. I have my users, everything is fine. I'm passing my user, I'm looping through them. If I have any user, so if my array, the length is not more than 0, so if it will be an empty, I encounter any error, it will say no user exists, so like that. If not, it will just loop through them, and I have an order list, and it will loop through them or map through them. And for each one, I need to create a component called user, and I'm passing a user data, which should be an object. So now let's go to my user component here. And now, of course, I will create an LI. Why do I need to create an LI? Because simply in the user here, I have an order list. So it's a good idea now for each user it be an LI. That's fine. Remember this one here, it will be an object. And if you want to know the structure of this object, it's simple. You can just go here. That will be your object here. So one of those. So I have an ID, name, username, email, and address is another object. Then I have inside it geolocation, latitude, longitude, phone, website, and company. Now, for me, I'm not going to show all this data, but for you, if you want to show all this data, it's not a bad idea. So here now I can create many div and I can make it as I want to. It's just for now, let's create just this one. I want the name and the email for now, just those. Of course, it's complaining. Why? Because I'm not adding my props here. So I can just say props.shape, and here it will be, of course, an object. I need the name, so name it will be string, and email it will be string. And I can add, of course, more property depending on my need. But for now, I'm just showing these two. Voila. So as you can see, I have this guy, and voila, that's my users. And of course, if I go to my network, as you can see, refresh, voila. Of course, it's sending 2-time requests because I'm in strict mode, but I mean, in production, it will be just 1 time. Of course, now you can add any CSS you want to. You can make it as complex as you want to. Here, you can add the email. You can add stuff like that. I don't know. What else do we have? Email.
Could you add maybe address, because there are 2 levels in address, so.
But it's okay. So let's add the address. And here, let's just say P. Address. And in the address, of course, I need user dot address, right? So it's an object address. And then here, what do we have? User address. Street, okay. User address and street. Of course, now it will complain. Why? So what should I do now? Now I need to add my property here, which will be address. So here I can just say address. And now here address is an object, right? So I can just say prop type dot shape again. And here it will just be an object, as you can see. So I can put it again because it's an object. So I can say shape. Now I have street. Of course, I don't have only street. I have something else. I'm quite sure I have something else. A city, for example, let's take the city. And if you want geo, also you need to shape and create another object inside it. So let's create this one, P. And here let's create user.address. This one, of course, it will complain again. And now here, all I have to do, I just go to city and city is like that. And now if I go to my website, oh, voila, it's mentioned the city. City, of course, it needs some styling. I have some styling for it, but I think I make it super complex. And yeah, user detailed container and then username, user info, blah, blah, I don't know. But that's simply your project. But of course, you will not make it this way. You'll make it a nice card, stuff like that. So you need to add nice CSS to it. I think I have some project like that, if I'm not mistaken. Get users, React or something. Get user, yeah, I should have something. Yeah, so for example, this is one card, for example. And I make it, if I click on next, it will show me the next user. You don't have to do that, but voila. And as you can see, you can create a nice card like that and make something really nice if you want to.
Can you show us how to do the next previous? Or it's too complex?
No, it's not too complex, but here instead of sending a request to get all the user, I need to send a request to get one user. For now, just finish this one and I will teach you after that how to do the next and the previous, okay?
Okay.
I think the project shouldn't be complex. We just add a new idea and this idea, it will be just useEffect here. That's it. And now it should be quite clear. I've explained it a lot. Remember, you need this array of dependency. It's super important. You cannot just omit it like that. It's not possible. It will cause a lot of trouble if you leave it this way. And yeah, you just need to create a new folder for your APIs. Well, that's it. Please create a new deliverable issue and name it get users. And whenever you are done, I'll teach you how to do it using next and previous as well. Any question? Any question? Let me stop.